Hey guys, welcome to the Dream Chasers Ground Zero podcast. Our goal with this show is to equip you with the knowledge, skills, and even connections you need to get your dreams off the ground. Today's guest is a real estate professional, founder, and owner of Cesar Property Group LLC, which was established in 2015. He kicked off his career in real estate investing 5 years ago as a residential wholesaler in the New Jersey and Pennsylvania area, specifically in Philadelphia. He's completed over 500,000 in sales as a wholesaler and made the shift into multifamily in late 2018. He has gained his vast investing knowledge through mentorship from the Michael Blank Group, Renatus Real Estate Investing, and is also a proud member of the GOB network of apartment investors. He's also the host of the No BS Apartment Investing podcast, aiming to educate our listeners by teaching them how they can leverage apartments to gain financial freedom, build wealth, and empower them to take the necessary actions to get started, all while removing the fluff that comes with investing. Tune in today for some valuable conversations about how to use a podcast to grow your network and how you won't see your progress, but others will. Also, make sure to stick around for the guest's advice to their ground zero self. Now, without further ado, let's get to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. Today we have with us returning guest, Marc Cesar. Marc, why don't you just kind of fill us in on a little bit of what you've been up to lately, who you are, and what you're working on right now?
Man, Aaron, I can't believe it's been a year that you've been running this platform, and I was very appreciative to actually see the start of your platform and the growth. Congratulations to you, man, and your team. Great job, kudos, and all that good stuff. In the interim, I mean, I've been very busy, productively busy to say. When we last spoke, I was actually, burying my feet into the multifamily space and just really networking and just building a presence. And I would say from the last time we last spoke, it's everything just really just picked off very fast, faster than I expected. So, I've been in a position where now I'm actually I'm still networking, I'm still interacting with people, and I think that's a key point to any business. But I definitely started a new company, formed a new partnership, and I definitely I'm also creating a thought leadership space to educate people on the benefits of investing in real estate and other and diversifying their portfolios and stuff like that. As well as I also run a podcast, I run a meetup. So I have a lot on my plate, and it's really fun. Those is very time consuming, but it's fun because, again, the stories you hear, the people you encounter, is like the information is just like golden.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's an absolute honor to have you back on here. And like very similarly, just to see your growth over the last year and following you after our initial connection and everything going on, just like seeing all of this new stuff, I was like, this is definitely a conversation that I want to have, and I definitely want to dig into a little bit more. So with the launch of a new company, launching a thought leadership platform, I believe starting the podcast, I don't think it was quite up and running yet when we last spoke. So just with all these new things being launched, let me ask, what were the new ground zeros over the last year, if any, and how have you then reacted to those to get to where you are now?
Man, is the hour enough time for us to dive into that information? I mean, of course, there's a lot of ground zeros when it comes to starting something new. For example, the podcast, as you mentioned, it wasn't, when we last spoke, it wasn't launched as of yet. So I officially launched, I believe, November of 2021. But prior to that, it was just like a lot of mental roadblocks, just who's going to listen, who's going to want to jump on as a guest, being that I'm not a household name or a well-known name, stuff like that. So it's a lot of things that come to your head, and really, I believe I elaborated to mindset in our first encounter. And it's, those mental roadblocks. So that's like, for me, that's a ground zero, especially if I'm doing something new and I don't have the full layout in front of me. I really just get into my head a lot. But honestly, I believe that once what I was doing last year from the constant networking and just connecting with people and just putting myself out there, I didn't realize that by me doing that, that actually opened a lot of avenues for me. So when I officially launched, I reached out to different people and they said, yeah, I love the concept. And of course, the podcast is called No BS Apartment Investing, and where we actually take away all the cookie cutter, the rainbows and unicorns of investing in apartments or any form of real estate. And we're just giving you the raw side of it, being a landlord, being an owner, the difficult side that people don't really show you on social media and, in verbatim, and you're really seeing what hassles people go through to make them a savvy investor. And, when I reached out to a lot of my guests, they were like, yeah, I love the concept, I want to jump on. And I tell you, like right now, I'm pretty much backlogged to episodes that I have yet to release, which is a great thing. And I didn't fall into the proverbial podcast graveyard, so I'm still running strong. Prayerfully, November will be my 1 year anniversary of my podcast. And like I said, man, from starting with nothing and to what I'm building now, it is a tremendous blessing. It is really fascinating to hear, millionaires, multimillionaires to sit down with a simple guy like me, and we're just having an honest conversation, and they're just divulging a lot of their experience on the show. And I dub it as free coaching without initially paying, an arm and a leg for coaching. So you can't go wrong with that at all.
Absolutely. I mean, and obviously we talk about networking and storytelling and a lot of different things on this show very frequently. And, like I'm somebody that can understand, like obviously having just gone through this, just a few months before you, I can totally understand exactly where you're coming from and just the doors that have opened since starting this journey, and that's where like the podcast medium is so powerful specifically for that, because you have something that you can leverage to bring those people on and have those conversations, because one, you're allowing them to share their story with you, but also anybody else who tunes in. So they're getting that exposure, but they're also able to give that value that they have to people other than yourself. And that gives you like more opportunity to get into that room and have that conversation with that person. And each one of those connections can lead you to a separate connection, can lead you to a separate resource, can lead you anywhere. I like to tell people that my entire journey, everywhere that I've gone from, ground zero to here now, is like a direct result of meeting one person. Yeah. And as you would know, that's our mutual connection, Adam, whom of which I saw that you just had on the podcast not too long ago. So that was good to see as well.
Definitely did. Yeah.
But no, like I can't speak highly enough of networking and just, putting yourself out there, because you truly don't know the doors that can open from that, especially if you're meeting somebody who has a wealthy network of their own, like somebody like Adam that has just a massive network of people. And I didn't know I was going to get access to that. But at the same time, like he was somebody that was then willing to see in me what I couldn't see myself and say, you know what, I'm going to help this kid out. And then look where we are. You know what I mean? I've got to meet people that I never would have dreamt of getting to meet. And we're only a year in. Like, we don't know where this is going to go from here. Like, it's just endless possibility. And a lot of that comes from just networking as well as mentorship. And that's something that I know you can speak to as well. But no, it's just been really an amazing journey. And that's why I love like hearing about yours as well. Just like, because like somebody else who's had their head down for a year, it's, it's fun to get on here and catch up about what all's been going on. So, one of the questions that I really thought of recently that I haven't actually had a chance to ask any of the guests, and I'm very curious what you're going to answer for this, but one of the questions that I've been curious about and just kind of hearing the story and like kind of knowing your pursuit over the last few years is, where do you think you would be if you decided not to follow this calling or this vision that you've recently been chasing?
Man, that is a amazing question. I'm going to have to steal that from you and use it on my show with your permission, of course. But that is a crazy question. I never really thought about it, to be honest with you. But if I really just take like a few seconds and really say where I would be, I probably would be doing the same thing I've done, I would say prior to 2021, which is really just limited networking, limited, exposure of myself and building a brand just doing the day by day, which is not much to say the least. Because again, as you just mentioned, the people that you connect with, for example, you mentioned Adam, which is our mutual connection. He definitely opened a lot of doors for us. And like I said, like whenever I talk to Adam, he's always pointing me like, hey, talk to this guy, Mark. And who would have thought that these little subtle, seeds that he's planting would sprout, such a big tree. And prior to 2021, I didn't have that. So, me just sitting back behind a computer, not really exposing myself out there to the whole world out there. And I believe that was prior to the pandemic. So where a lot of these connections were, physically going to a networking event, shaking hands and stuff like that. And I hardly did that. So like I said, I was a guy behind the computer, just numbers and do what I have to do. But now that I actually stepped out of my shell and I'm comfortable behind a mic, I'm comfortable behind a camera, and now it's leading me to become more comfortable to actually wanting to meet the people that I connect to, on, via social media, via Zoom and stuff like that. And I can go out and shake hands and say, hey, I'm Mark, this is my podcast. Hey, I'm Mark, this is what I do. So I'm more comfortable with that. So I would definitely say, man, that right there, that little tidbit, that little seed definitely, just blew my mind open. It just blew me. It just, shot me out the water, if you want to call it that. So I definitely would say that, yeah, that's where I would be if I didn't, if all of this didn't happen.
No, I love that, man. I love that because I mean, like you've essentially realized that, like no matter what, you would have stuck to the vision roughly. Like you still like may not have been on this specific path, but you would have been in the same general area because this is what you're passionate about. This is where you want to be. And that's
Correct.
where, like, one, I really love the story that you just told as well. But I feel like the question that comes to mind for me, and that I'm genuinely curious about, is that like with these recent changes and things that we've been talking about, with the launch of the platform, with the new company, the podcast, and things, what like really was the driver behind that whole change? And I kind of have an idea, but I want to hear it from you. Just where like what really drove you to say like, you know what, like now's the time for me to put my head down and make this change. I'm going to sprint this out. I'm going to put in the work and I'm going to make this happen in my life.
Yeah, awesome question again. To be honest, man, I would say that what drove me really was seeing the potential, the potential success that I can attain with the people that I started, shaking hands with or rubbing virtual elbows with, so to speak, and seeing what they're doing and not trying to reinvent the wheel, but just paving my own lane using their strategy, using the same thing that they're doing. Again, success leaves crumbs. And rather than trying to, go and get my own bread and paving my, just chopping up my own crumbs, just follow what the other successful people did and just carving the niche out that fits my style and that fits what I want to do. So I love real estate. I breathe real estate. I can have a 12-hour conversation about real estate, which I've done in the past. It is super awesome. But, again, being that this is a ground zero show, podcasting, thought leadership platforms, those were something brand new to me. I was never exposed to it. I've seen people do it. I've seen people make, a crazy living out of it. I just never saw it as something that I wanted to do because, again, I call myself an introvert and I wasn't too much of a people person. But again, through just one conversation with a guy like Adam, that opened a whole new world. And again, as an entrepreneur, you have to be a people person. You have to learn how to communicate. And that's the thing that he basically just drilled into my head. Like, you need to learn how to communicate. You need to learn how to talk to people. And as you said, podcasting is a great medium to actually reach other people and to just gain information and talk to people. And now that I see that, hey, what was I so scared of? Just talking to somebody, like we're having now. And I always tell people in my podcast, like, we're not doing a scripted show. We're just having a casual conversation, and where it goes, it goes. And I found that to be very simple. So yeah, man, I mean, that was the driver for me, just to really understand people, just to hear their story, to share it with others who may not be able to who may have to pay an arm and a leg to hear certain stories, but you're getting it for free. You're getting pivotal information that you can build on. That right there is a driver for me. I love talking to people. Like I go, my entire day is really just talking to people and making relationships. So I get a high off that.
No, I love that, man. I mean, you gave me a lot of different things. I was scribbling some notes down while you were kind of going through those stories. A lot of different things that I feel like I want to touch on there. I guess I'll go like with the first one that you mentioned. Like, I loved that when you were talking about like throughout this past year that like you finally got that push, you finally got the drive to get started and kind of get yourself into those first couple different conversations. And then eventually you just hit a point where you're really like, what was I scared of? Like that's what I really want to talk about here just for a second, because I think that so many of us just struggle to get started. We're so worried about, like you said, we have those thoughts like, who's going to listen to me? Why would I do this? Why is this? Why is that? You kind of have that voice in the back of your head telling you not to do it because it's something that's going to make you uncomfortable. And I just think that like that reminds me so much of like the premise of all these ground zeros that we talk about. And starting from ground zero, like it's natural not to feel fit. Like it's always new. You're always going to be kind of uncomfortable. That's what ground zero is. And you feel like you're not necessarily worthy to step into that role, to do those things, to have those conversations with those people. But I feel like something that I've tried to do and something that I've heard from a few others as well now is like shift that mindset. Try to think of it this way, that you can then say, can I physically or mentally take on this burden, we'll call it, that I'm thinking about taking on, for whatever that goal may be. Can you add it to your plate and survive? And if not, what can you do to get to that point? Where can you feel like, what kind of experience can you build to feel just comfortable enough to open that door? If the answer is yes, whether you're uncomfortable or not, you need to do that anyway. Like you need to force yourself into that situation and you need to do it anyway. And there's a segue to that, but I want to keep on this point for a second here. It's just that every ground zero is going to bring something new. You're going to be somewhere you've never been before. And you have to force yourself into those situations, because sometimes like you have to kind of like force yourself to grow, or that voice in the back of your head is going to keep you exactly where you are indefinitely. And what I'm trying to say is like something that I've come to realize recently, and that we can definitely talk more about, is like if you're only leaving your comfort zone when you feel comfortable, then you're never going to reach your destination. And you have to allow yourself to level up constantly. And that's why we hear so many people say like, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because like
Yeah,
it's always going to be uncomfortable, especially like if this is the game that you're playing, you're almost always going to be uncomfortable because you're always experiencing something new. But if you can get used to that experience, if you can get used to those like sensations and those feelings in that moment, you're going to level up faster than everybody else, because the majority of everybody else doesn't even start.
correct. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And like you just said, I believe, I forgot who quoted this, but it says life begins when you step out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
You know, the mo we're built to really stay where we feel comfortable. But the minute we start stretching ourselves out and we go outside of where it's comfortable for us, it just opens up a whole new world of possibilities that is just like, wow, I never thought about this. I never knew this happened. And that's what life is about, just really learning new things every day, because the more stagnant you remain, I believe that's the quickest way you die. It might not be physically, but mentally, emotionally, physically, that's where it affects you the most. And I see too many people who are just stagnant and, I'm comfortable here. I'm just going to stay in my lane. No, just, take one step. It might not, like you said, ground zero. You might not, you know, go from 0 to 100, in the first day, but the first step that you take, that's success. You know, even when it comes to something like, talking to people online, just you getting on camera, that's the first step. I'm still in Adam's quotes here. So, he definitely mentioned that in my podcast. But yeah, like, and it rings true, just you calling somebody and just say, hey, I need help. That's the first step. And that step is the most crucial step because, again, it opens up. You never know. The worst thing a person can say is, no, I'm not going to help you. But at least you gain that confidence by saying, hey, I'm just going to pick up the phone and call somebody. That person might be, hey, if even, let's say, for example, if I want to know how to sell, how to create a new iPhone company, I'll call the owner iPhone. If I had the number, I'll just call them like, hey, I'm looking for help. How did you do it? They might not want to share their secrets with me, but I had the confidence enough to pick up the phone and call somebody who's way successful than me and ask for help. They still told me no, but I would sit back like, wow, yeah, I did this. So I could call the next person. I could call Bill Gates. I could call somebody. But again, that first step is the most important step. So definitely you have to learn to get out your comfort zone. And I'm glad you shared that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's something I want to get straight to, just like in case it's not, which I mean, I feel like it is, but still, like it's not something that you can kind of just wake up and be able to do. Like you can start like intentionally making those decisions in your life, but odds are you're still not going to be perfect. Like you're not just going to wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm never letting that voice creep in again, and then it just never happens again. If you can, great, good for you. I'd like to hear your secret, but anyway,
Yeah.
point is, like I said, you're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. And like this is something that like I still deal with. I'm sure you still deal with at times. Like every once in a while, like I still let that voice in my head creep in for certain things. But it's because I get nervous. You know what I mean? I still want to do well at certain things. I still want to excel in certain areas and things. So like, yeah, that voice creeps in, doubt creeps in, different things like that. But it's because I want those things. And that's where like you have to push through those sensations, those moments, those emotions to say like to what's the word I'm looking for? To fully realize that vision, that destination, whatever it is. You have to pay your dues per se. You have to, go through the tribulations to be able to fully accept and embellish that moment to become that next level, if you will. And I mean, and eventually, like what I realized, how's that quote go? You can't be upset with the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do or the work you didn't put in. Like
Powerful.
it's pretty much like that, where like, like I let myself take breaks. I let myself lose focus. Different things like that. And like sometimes you need breaks. I'm not trying to like, I'm not
Yeah.
like an all work guy. But what I'm saying is like when you look back and you realize you're not where you want to be, you have to realize that you're the only one that's responsible. And that's something that I've come to grow into and learn, like especially now more than ever. Um, but like you also can't be too hard on yourself either. Like you have to realize you're still growing. And that's where
Yeah.
like what I really love the point that you made is like taking that first step in like just starting there. Like don't try to go from 0 to 100 like you said. Like to steal the Adam quote, the first step is just you getting on camera. Like that's a prime example for podcasting or YouTube or whatever it is that thing is that you want to do, or even just getting on Instagram or social media. Like just get on and talk, take a couple videos. You don't have to send them to anybody.
Yeah.
Just get comfortable interacting, speaking by yourself, talking to the camera, talking to whoever it is. You could even do something like we're doing right now. Have somebody else on the other end of the phone and just talk to them like about whatever it is. Just get comfortable talking about that thing. And then, if you feel good enough or you want to get some feedback, find somebody, like one person, maybe one or two that you trust. Show that video to them about whatever it is that you're talking about. Whether ask them if it makes sense. Get positive, constructive feedback from that person that you trust, and then go again. Take what they said, reapply that to your next video. Go make a new one. Bring it back to them. Is this now good in your eyes? Okay, let's show this to one other person. Okay, take feedback from them. Take feedback from both of them. Now let's go build another one. Like you slowly build that confidence. Like you said, like getting like 1, 2, 3, 10 podcast episodes under your belt. You'll start to feel that change where you just feel a lot more comfortable. But it's like I can't even necessarily explain to you like the difference. Like you won't see it. But when you look back, say you're on episode, 52 or whatever it is, like we just recently had, and then you look back at episode 1, then you'll see it. But like in the moment when you're doing one a week or a couple every couple days, whatever like your schedule looks like, you're not going to see it in the moment, but everybody else does.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that listen, man, that is a that is a dope analogy, because it's like I know a lot of people use this. It's like when you go to the gym, you might go to the gym, feeling overweight, and you start lifting weights, you start running, hitting the treadmill, and a week, 2 weeks goes down the line, 3 weeks go down the line, and you're just looking at yourself and you're like, I don't see anything. But someone else might come to you like, yo, you lost a lot of weight. Like, wow, you're getting fit, you're getting toner. And in your head, you're not seeing it, but someone else sees what you're doing and they're complimenting you. So it basically, it works. So you just got to keep the process, trust the process, just keep at it. And eventually 90 days down the line, 6 months down the line, then you start seeing like, okay, now I'm more muscular, now I'm toner, my energy is a little bit better. And you'll recall that person who said, hey, wow, you look slimmer, you look thinner, when you didn't feel like it. And like you said, you just look back from where you are now to where you started, you'll see the difference. You'll hear the difference in the tone. You'll hear the difference in the questioning that you're asking. You'll hear the difference in the interactions. So it's a process, but you have to trust the process. You definitely have to trust it. But start.
Absolutely,
That's the key. Just start.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you made that point. And like to steal another kind of, I don't want to keep calling like Adam quotes, but like one of the things that he's always helped me with, I mean, and this is another ode to like mentorship and like accountability, just that like we were just talking about, like he listens to my episodes at certain times. I don't know how much he does anymore because I know how busy he's gotten recently with a lot of different things. We won't go into that. Yeah. But like where he'd say like, I'd ask him different things or whatever, we'd have conversations, and it was very similar to that. He's like, you don't see it, but you're getting so much better. He's like, you don't see it, but like, that's where like the importance of having somebody there, like, when you start to feel burnout, when you start to feel like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. How am I going to keep going? Why am I even doing this if it's not working? Especially like with like an example, like the gym or something like that, having somebody that can then say like, just keep going. Like, you don't see it, but I see it. Having somebody in your life that can believe it more so than you, or will believe it when you don't, I think is extremely, extremely important. Just to have that person that says like, dude, don't fret over this momentary lapse of confidence. Definitely. Just keep going. It like, and I feel like, I mean, and the craziest part is a lot of it's just mindset. And like you said, and with an example like the gym, it is extremely hard because it is a slow process. But a lot of these, things that we're talking about, a lot of these goals that people have, like a lot of people have these goals because they're worth achieving. Well, most goals worth achieving take time. And that's where, like it's extremely difficult to stay focused in those times, because like you're going to face trials and tribulations. That the gauntlet is what I always like to call it. Like just all these different things will hit you as you're trying to achieve that thing, but you're earning it. You're showing that when you eventually reach that destination, that you put in the work, that you are here, that you deserve to be in this space, or, to be in this body, or whatever that thing is for you. And that's like, what's the quote? I think it's Abraham Lincoln that says, most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And like, that's where like, I see myself and so many people like struggle now, that like, we don't, like, we allow ourselves to get distracted by those, like, what's it called? Like, I can't think of it, but anyway, like by those little things that come in and derail us. We allow those things to like wreck our confidence, to, completely slow down our progress, kill our momentum. And like, what we don't realize is like, if we can keep our mind on the goal, if we can keep our mind on what we want to achieve, that as days go by, we magically catch ourselves making decisions in line with that vision. And that's why it's so powerful that like you hear so many people talk about how they like write down their goals, or how they write them down every morning. Like they do that because they keep those things that they want to achieve in the front of their mind, so that when they're going through things throughout the day, they're unconsciously making decisions or seizing opportunities to fulfill that desire. And they're not even thinking about it. but it's because they keep those things in mind. They keep their eye on the prize, if you will, where they want to go. And that's where where I'm kind of trying to segue here is I think it's Andrew Carnegie says, all things come through desire and every sincere prayer is answered. We become like that on which our hearts are fixed. I think I got that right. I just read that chapter this morning. But anyway, I think like where so many of us struggle is just with that slow process. And that's where I want to ask you, like with a lot of these things that you've been working on over the last year, like we know about the process and it's definitely taken time. And you were talking about just before we went ahead and hit record here today, like that it's been a grueling process, but now you're kind of on the other side of that. You're getting to reap much more of those benefits of like what that feels like and what that looks like for you. What would be your advice to somebody who's out there, say, like grinding right now or looking to get started or wanting to make change, that they have this dream or this vision in mind? Like, what's your advice to them to keep their eye on that prize?
Yeah, man. I would definitely say make sure that that goal is visible. You just said it, man. Like people write down their goals and they write it every day, every morning. Make sure it's somewhere that you can see it. I know people do vision boards. I used to do vision boards, but I have like a notebook on my thing. Like I'll give a great example, and I've never shared this with anyone. I have on my screensaver, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but on my screensaver of my phone, it basically says, I will never be broke again. So anytime I turn on my phone, I see that quote, it motivates me to get out and just, like, all right, I can either choose to be broke or I can choose to, hustle my butt off, do whatever I have to do to make sure that I'm not broke again. And it's that visualization that when you see it, your mind start processing it and your mind start, just take it in, and then you're now moving towards that goal. So I would definitely say, write the goal down, however you want to write it, even if it's in a post-it, write it on your wall if you want to, if you feel comfortable doing that, or have it in front of your computer. When you turn on your computer, you see that goal, like, hey, I want to make $1 million. Hey, I want to be a passive investor. Hey, I want to start a new podcast. It's right there in front of you. And now once you see it, take the first step, find what's the next step. Okay, I want to start a podcast. What's the next step? Reach out to someone who has a podcast if you need to. Like, hey, I'm looking to start a podcast. What are the steps? What do I do? They'll tell you. Again, one thing that I've learned is that successful people, they want to share their secrets. But the problem is not a lot of people ask. So a successful person is not going to come to me and say, hey, I want to give you my secrets. No, they're going to keep doing what they're doing every day to be successful. But if I go to that person and I say, hey, how did you attain your success? How did you start your company? What led you to being a multimillionaire? They'll tell you, they'll give you the game. You just have to go up and ask them. So if you are looking to start a podcast, a new business, find someone in that niche that you're in. Another Adam Ode, I think this is like the Adam show here, but he definitely said this on my podcast a few weeks ago. He said, find someone that you love and just binge on their material. If you can reach out to them and ask them questions. Because there's so many different, materials out there. You can get lost in a rabbit hole by just jumping from material to material to material. But like for him, he definitely said, people that he follows Hunter Thompson, Myron Golden, Russell Bronson, he just binges on those guys. And look where he's at now. He's very successful with the whole, click funnels thing and stuff like that. And he's comfortable doing it. And he shares his secrets. For me, in real estate, I follow a certain key people. Like, for example, when I want to raise capital, I follow Hunter Thompson. I binge his stuff. I follow everything that he does. And then I implement what he does. If I have a question, I have I have access to him via a Facebook group. I'll reach out to him like, hey, Hunter, this, I need help with this. What are your insights on it? And they'll tell you, they'll give you the game for free. You just have to be willing to take that first step, get out of your comfort zone and ask the question, reach out, make that first introduction, and they'll give you the game. So that's my advice for anyone. If you're going to get started, make sure that the goal is visible, you're seeing it every day, and you're taking that first step, which is finding the people or the groups that are focus on what you want to do, or what the business that you want to set up, or the goal that you want to accomplish, and binge it and ask questions. Get to that person, get to that key person, ask them, how can they help you? And I bet everything that I have that they will give you the answer. I bet everything that I have that they will say, hey, this is how you can get started. This is the first step.
No, I love that so much, man. I mean, and I feel like what it makes me think of, like with the goals, like we were talking about, is like the SMART goal framework. I don't know if you've like heard of that. I don't know the specific acronym, so I'm not going to butcher it, but look it up. It's like a good way to frame them so that they're attainable, like you mentioned, that you can really lay it out in the way that you can see it, you can visualize it, and there's steps. It's very, very specific, and it makes it more difficult, but it's much easier for you to visualize and track. And that's where, like, I'm not trying to make this whole thing about like the gym today, but like one of the things like that I see like with that specifically is like that like when you start working out, if you're trying to like lose weight or, you know, shed fat, whatever that thing may be, the scale will lie to you. Like, I kid you not, it lies to you. And like a lot of people close with me were just dealing with this, that like when you are shedding fat, you are also building muscle. So muscle weighs more than fat. When you gain muscle and lose fat, the scale doesn't change. And I mean, I'm not an exercise scientist or anything like that. Let me put a little disclaimer in here right now. But the thing is, like, you are making progress. Like, and that's like something that I try to tell people, like, this comes back to the, you won't see it, but the people around you will. And that's where, like, don't stop. Like if you truly want to get there, no matter what it is that's in your way right now, just don't stop. You can slow down. You can take a day off if you need to. You can reassess. You can reframe your mind. You can do whatever it is that you need to do, but don't stop. Because when you stop, like, you don't, like, you will likely never find that momentum again. I mean, and if you do, great. Like, I'm not saying, like, it's just so much harder to start again from zero than it is to go back 2 steps wherever it is that you are right now. Because, like, think about it, like, even from like a relationship standpoint, there's a lot of people that'll stay in a toxic relationship because they don't want to start over.
Very true. Yeah.
There's a prime example. Like, you're allowing yourself to go through this same pain every day or whatever it is when you're not happy, when you're not at home, and maybe not even safe. And for what? You know, like, take a couple of steps back, do whatever it is you need to do, but don't stop. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on that thing. And like with me, like, I feel like that's been a huge focus lately, just like that mindset piece of everything. And like what I'm trying to focus on is like how I'm responding and reacting to like the things that are going on, whether that be like challenges that come up or whatever it is that like happens. And I try to like, don't necessarily take note of like the way you feel, but take note of what you're thinking at the time, because like where the mind goes, the body follows. And I'm just trying to make sure that like I take the time to enjoy this process as I'm building a life and career for myself. Like I mentioned to you just before we hit record here today, like I just started working here a couple weeks ago, like full time for the first time, like in my life, like after graduating college and things like that. That's a big step. And there's a lot of different things going on right now that make this kind of a confusing time. But like, I'm trying to take that step back and say like, dude, this is like the best part of the whole thing right now. Like, you are building everything right now. Like, you are laying the foundation for everything you want to become. Like, don't pass that up because you're too focused about where you want to be. Like, and I'm not saying like I speak for everyone, but my biggest problem was always like holding this like unattainable, unreasonable, like goal over my head about where I was supposed to be and where I actually was. And that was just always wrecking my confidence, wrecking my momentum, and wrecking everything, because no matter what I did, I wasn't hitting that. Now, that's not all bad, because it gives you something to chase. It gives you something to stretch towards. Like, I'm not saying, you know, setting a high goal is a bad thing, but don't set it so high that it's just constantly discouraging you from the work that you are putting in.
No, I definitely agree, man. And I will say this, one of the a quote that I've read from Michael Jordan. He said, "Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try." So it ties into everything you just said. A lot of people, fear is a normal thing. I don't want to say, I know fear, the acronym for fear is false false evidence appearing real, or something like that. I apologize if I butchered the quote, but a lot of people they fear. And a lot of, I would say, gurus out there, they teach you to be afraid of fear. I personally, I view that a little differently. I'm like, all right, I don't want to be afraid of fear, but I want to face fear head on and really understand, okay, why am I fearful of this thing? For me, it was like, why am I fearful of starting a podcast? Why am I fearful of starting a new company? I know there's so much tied to a lot of these things, and fear is normal, as we're human. It's going to kick in, but just look at yourself in the mirror. Like, okay, why am I afraid of this? Why am I afraid of that? Figure out the answer. Be honest with yourself. Okay, if I'm afraid of this, okay, I'm afraid of starting a podcast because for me, it was like, all right, I'm afraid of launching a podcast because I don't know who's going to listen. I fear starting a podcast and, it not going anywhere, because again, when I first started, I actually went through different podcasts and I looked through the podcast and I'm like, okay, this person started a podcast, they only had one episode. 2 years later, nothing. This person had 5 episodes and then nothing. And that crept into my mind. And I'm like, okay, I have a fear of that. But then, like you mentioned earlier, it's like, all right, if you have someone who can see something in you, who can counteract that fear and say, you know what, no, don't let that fear sink in, but this is how you avoid that pitfall, that is golden. And for you and I, we had Adam. Adam said, you know what, just go ahead and do it. Start it. And we did. And look where we are now. You're a year ahead of me. I'm closing in on a year. And we're still going. I believe I'm 2 seasons into my podcast now. I have about, I don't even know how many episodes I've released. And I have episodes lined up until next March of next year. Who would have thought that? But again, if I gave into that fear, or if I succumbed to it, or if I just cowered to it, then that fear would have just, clouded my judgment and I would have never started. So again, I tried, even though I failed, but I still did it. One of the big things for me right now, and for me, I like to be transparent, and I don't want people to really, just look at me like, oh yeah, he's successful, he's doing. No, I look at my podcast numbers. I try not to, but I look at my podcast number. I want to see, okay, where can I improve? What can I do better? For example, I'll be very transparent. My first episode, I had 150 downloads, but then I've seen the downloads just, fluctuate. I've had 20, 30, 50, 70, then go back to like, 10 in the double digits. And that's why I had a moment where I'm like, why is this happening? What am I doing wrong? How can I get back to 150s? Because I need to enhance the podcast. And, I spoke to my wife and she was like, listen, just keep putting content out. Just keep putting content out. I spoke to someone else who was doing a podcast. They said the same thing. Just keep pumping content out. It's not going to be overnight, but keep pushing it out. And eventually you'll start seeing that your numbers start growing. It'll grow organically. Your downloads will grow organically. People will consume. You will have a loyal following that just want to hear from you. And I'm like, okay. So I faced that fear and I dug in, and I'm like, to this point, I'm just like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to keep pumping content out. Just keep pumping content out. I'm posting content on social media. I'm posting content out here. I'm recording. I'm just posting, and I'm starting to see my numbers are, becoming more steady now. They're 50s, 60s, 70s. And I have a loyal following who appreciate the avenue that I've created for my podcast. So, you don't want to be afraid of fear, but you want to confront it and then address it. You want to confront that fear and find a solution to that fear. If you can find a solution yourself, congratulations, that's cool. If you can't, find someone else on the outside looking in who has success where you're at. And again, they will give you the information. They will point you in the right direction and help you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the point that you made about gurus and fear. And I feel like what that makes me think of is like primarily the places where I encounter gurus is social media. And I speak about social media on here a lot simply because I think it's a highlight reel. And I think that especially in the cases of said gurus, that it kind of discourages people in certain aspects. And I feel like that's somewhere that I got for a little while there, that what I would always get caught up on is that just because somebody else is out there winning doesn't mean that I'm losing. And like where I would kind of get this like sticking point was that like, oh well, A, B, and C is like doing this, and I'm still here doing this. Like that, like you hear people talk about comparison all the time. Comparison, it can be a good thing, but it can also be a really bad thing. And you have to take into account like that your journey is different than theirs. And that's
Yeah.
where like I finally think I've turned a corner there where I don't pay as much attention about what they're doing. I take note of what they're doing, like if it's somewhere that I want to get, but it's not so discouraging to the point that I'm like, why am I not there yet? Like where I'm at to where I'm at. This is my journey.
Yeah.
I still have things to
Yeah.
learn. I still have things to put together and build. Like if I'm not ready for that yet, that's okay. We'll get there. You know, we're building. And that's where like, you know, like I said, you just have to stop kind of comparing yourself to people that aren't a part of your journey. Like they're on their own separate path, and you have to focus on your path and keep taking those incremental steps towards your goal, like we keep talking about in that vision. Like their journey is not yours. And I feel like something that I really had to learn kind of the hard way was not to let the internet rush you, and that there's very few people out there that are actually posting their failures.
Yeah. And man, that is a crucial point. Again, you never know someone else's story or what they, how they got there. And social media, man, it's just like, it's good, it's bad. It's a hate love relationship, So you can learn a lot from social media. You can gain a lot of insight, but again, it could take you down a rabbit hole because, like you said, you're seeing what someone is doing, and you're seeing people like, hey, they're posting, I'm by the beach, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but and you're becoming envious of it in a sense without you realizing it, and you're just like, I want to be there, I want to be there, but you don't know what that person did. That person might have had a trust fund. They might have a large amount of capital that they can pump into whatever business that they had to shortline it, to streamline it, and get there faster. But you have to look at where you're at right now, and as you said, you can see yourself there where they're at. Like if that's a goal of yours, if you want to retire by the beach or run a business by the beach, okay, make that a goal. But now come back to reality. Like don't just get lost in social media land, which a lot of people tend to do. Come back to reality. Okay, this is my goal. I want to retire by the beach, or I want to run a business from my laptop by the beach, and just 4 hours a day and just do what I have to do. But come back to where you're at right now. Okay, where am I right now? Okay, if I don't have the capital, or if I don't have the systems in place, let me start putting the system in place. Let me start building from what I have now. Take those first steps. Again, it goes back to those baby steps, and that's what life is. A baby doesn't just come out the womb and start walking. They're on their backs for the most part. They learn how to toss and turn. They're learning how to sit up, and eventually you put them on the floor, they start crawling, and then they're gaining their strength and they can stand up, and then they start walking, and then they're running around. And that's the same steps you have to take with whatever you want to do. You start crawling. Again, if you don't have the resources, connect with someone with the resources, or find ways to get those resources. If you don't have the capital, or even if you have the vision and you can't execute that vision, find someone that can help you execute that vision. And you're the visionary, and that person can, that person is the person that brings everything from your head to paper, and they'll build it out for you. And guess what? You're streamlining the system now, and you're working towards that goal of, hey, I want to be by the beach, or work on the beach and spend my days, swimming and do whatever. So that's what it is. You have, again, it all falls back, ties into trust the process and start small. Start small. Once you get the basics, then you can scale. Don't try to scale from the beginning. You're always going to fail. And then you're just wasting valuable time. Start where you're at with what you have, and just incrementally just grow it. And before you know it, before you even realize, it's like, oh wow, look how far I came from. Oh wow, I didn't even realize that I got this far. You'll just be shocking yourself left and right.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I'll kind of wrap this up, I suppose, with another Adam quote. We might as well just tag him as a guest on this one.
I guess we
One of
should.
the things, one of the most powerful things that he taught me, um, I want to say it wasn't quite a year ago, but last year I was doing a lot of different things outside of the podcast as well. I was going to a lot of different like virtual conferences, doing a lot of different things, kind of trying to get my name out there anywhere that I could. And I was, presenting on some business ideas. I was doing a lot of different things to kind of like get my name out and get a little bit of exposure, but also, I was trying to build something. And, as I was going to a lot of these different like conferences and things like I was just talking about, like, and I would have to tell people about like my business idea, about things that I was trying to build, about what I was doing, what my systems looked like, what all this stuff looked like. And I mean, I was coming in there as a 20-year-old kid. I'm like, I'm still in college. I don't know all of this, but like I'm here. I'm in this room anyway. So, here we are. And I was like, I had a conversation with him and I was like, there's going to be a lot more wealthy people in there. There's going to be a lot more connected people in there. Like, who am I? Again, like this was that kind of like imposter syndrome kind of creeping back in. Like, who am I to come in and present on this thing that somebody else in that room could very easily just go create, like immediately, that they could essentially just take my idea and run with it. So, I was nervous. I was like, how can I come in and like, like I want to present on it, but at the same time, like I don't want somebody to take my idea and then go do it. Like
Right.
when like I'm here struggling, like I don't have capital. I don't necessarily have a huge network. I don't necessarily have all these things to build that. Like, how am I supposed to do this? And more or less the advice that he gave me in this moment was like, more or less, I'm trying to think of how he worded it. This was a little while ago now, but he more or less just said that no matter what you do, no matter what you're pursuing, no matter what you go in there and say, all of those other people are not you. No matter how
Wow.
hard they try, no matter what else they do, they cannot emulate the energy, the story, the passion that you do. And they can talk
Wow.
about it in their own way. They can take their own spin. They can do whatever they want. But no matter how hard they try, if they take this idea and run with it, they're not you. And like, it's something that I've tried to carry with me every day since then. I mean, and it's just like, it's a really powerful thing that I didn't like realize because I was too busy worrying about why everybody else would be better at that thing than me, than thinking about why I would be so good to do the thing that I was trying to do. And, sadly, that whole process has kind of been backburnered for now. Like it's still kind of on the horizon, but I got to take a few more steps to build some things out. And like, I guess where I was trying to go with that was not only the point that he made, but also the point where um, prior to us kind of putting a halt on that process, we didn't realize how much we actually were accomplishing and how close we actually were to like launching something that was actually tangible, something, a product and an offering. Like we didn't realize how close we actually were. And that's where like I was just like where you were just saying like you don't realize the process that you're making like in the pieces that are actually coming together with every little bit that you do. And that's where I wanted to kind of segue that in before we go ahead and close this out. But Mark, man, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you back on. I always enjoy having these conversations. It's been great to hear everything that you've been building and had going on over this last year. As you know, one of the questions that I always like to ask the guests in closing is that if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself during that ground zero moment, what would it be? So to kind of segue that into this specific episode, since you've already been on here once before, if you kind of go back to an issue or a ground zero that you had over this last year, what do you think you would tell yourself in that conversation?
Stop being afraid. Stop getting into my own head, and just start swinging.
Perfect. But if you're going with a baseball analogy, you're right though. There's a Jordan quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you don't ever step up to the plate, you're never going to hit the ball. Not necessarily just to roll off of sports analogies, but That's how it is. Like there's a point where you have to kind of put yourself in a position for opportunity to present itself. And that starts with you taking action, you stepping into that role. I love that. But Marc, seriously, man, thank you so much again for being willing to come on and share your story yet again with us and everything that you've learned over this last year. For anybody out there hoping to get in touch, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm big on LinkedIn, so you can definitely reach out to me on linkedin.com/in/Marc Cesar, MarcCesar. You can definitely check out my website, KeystoneEquityPartners.com, and that way you'll learn more about my partner and I, what we do on the real estate side, and the various things that we're working on. I'm also on Instagram, Mr. Success 50, the number 50. You can check me out there. Facebook, Marc Cesar, I think it is. But I'm sure Aaron will definitely post it all in the show notes. Yeah, I mean, listen, I love connecting with people. Reach out by any means, shoot me a message, shoot me a DM or something. And I'm an open guy. I'm an open book. I love to give back the knowledge that I attain. It doesn't serve me any good to keep it to myself, so it's best to pay it forward. So if you have any questions or anything like that, mindset wise, or starting a podcast or something, reach out and I'll definitely give you the game at no cost to me.
Absolutely, man. Anybody tuned in right now, please follow up and reach out to Marc. As he just said, very open, very understanding, and very willing to help anybody who reaches out. As always, we appreciate that. But Marc, seriously, man, thank you so much again. Always remember, everyone, this is Dream Chasers Ground Zero, and there's nowhere to go from here. But thanks again, Marc.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed any part of today's message and haven't already, please like and subscribe. I really want to be providing as much value as possible for you guys. So please respectfully leave any suggestions in the comments below. Thank you much for your support. Until next time, there's nowhere to go from here but up. Thanks, guys.